So if you're interested in building both hypertrophy, okay, building muscle and strength, we need to talk about protein. Because how can you build muscle if you're lacking the main building block of muscle? That's why we talk about protein when training. There's a lot of advice surrounding protein that's just outdated. There's been a lot of new discoveries about it, not in terms of new fancy stuff that you can do, but actually the opposite, about how much of that advice is actually not important at all. And so with this video, I want to provide a step-by-step process and really a lot of clarity to how protein really affects muscle and strength. Because as you know, this whole channel is meant to be the channel on building strength and muscle at the same time. As a normal person, I was able to build 20 kilos of muscle while at the same time learning skills like the human flag or doing an 80 kilo weighted chin-up or a 240 pound weighted dip. So to gain some clarity, is protein important for muscle or for strength or for both? Protein is a resource to build, okay? And between muscle and strength, what needs to be built? The answer is muscle, okay? Muscle is actually the resource that is getting built, new actual material, and so it needs protein. Strength is not about building. Strength is about using the resources that you have, the muscles, in a more efficient way, okay? Basically, from the same resources, strength training allows you to express more strength out of the same resources, okay? So really, protein has a direct effect of muscle on muscle growth, which then has an effect on strength. So it also has an indirect effect on strength, okay? So protein is still important for both, but especially for muscle growth because it's the building block to build actually muscle. And when talking about protein, really, there's a lot of that we can cover, but this is how I view the logic, okay? The most important thing is, of course, the amount, okay? How much actual protein you're eating. This is the key variable, and from this, we derive the less important parts, or at least the other parts, like how many meals, the timing, okay? How do you distribute this whole total amount into the exact strategy, okay? But the amount is where it all starts. So let's talk about it, okay? How much protein to eat? How do you make this decision? Okay? How do you make the decision on how much protein to eat? I think there are two main things, just two, that influence your decision on how much protein you eat. Now, the first one is your body weight, plus, we could say a little bit smaller, like how safe you want to be. And we're going to talk about why. And the second factor is whether you're bulking or cutting or maintaining, okay? So those two are our factors, your body weight and how safe you want to be, and we're going to cover this, and bulking versus cutting.
The template you see helps you calculate the exact protein amount based on pretty much what we cover in this video, okay? Later in the video, I'm gonna show you a demo for it, but if you want to get it, it's free. You just click in the link in the description, join Project Delta, okay? In the classroom, once you're inside, you go on free resources and you get all the free resources there, the all-in-one template, and you can create your own copy here, okay? So it's free, it's the link in the description of this video.
Now, let's start from bulking versus cutting. So the idea normally has been that when you're losing weight, when you're in a weight loss phase, when you're cutting your fat, you need more protein, okay? For cutting, more protein. For bulking, less protein. Because if you're in a caloric deficit, you need to be a bit more aggressive with how much protein you eat. Now, this sounds great in theory, happy face, but how about in practice? This is a big fallacy that we're gonna see over and over, that we get attached to the theory, desperate for something that works, but then when you measure it in practice, for example, when you give different amounts of protein to people who are bulking, cutting, or maintaining, giving more protein to people who cut, giving less protein to people who bulk, guess what happens to the results in practice? Which gains more muscle? You see no difference. And this is one of the new things that we've discovered. Like, this has had a lot of inertia, this idea of different protein amounts for bulking versus cutting, but in practice, it's shown to not have any effect on how much muscle you build. So this is great news. This means that we have one less thing to think about, to worry about. We don't need to choose different amounts of protein, whether we are gaining weight or losing weight. You can just find your number based on this, the only variable remaining, and you're fine. How nice is that? So, since bulking versus cutting does not have any relevance, and let's also color this. There you go. How good. We can only focus on body weight and how safe you want to be. Now, why body weight? Because we know that the more lean mass, the more body mass you have, and the more protein you need, okay? So if you weigh 100 pounds, you're gonna need maybe 100 grams a day of protein. For example, we're gonna go into exact amounts. And if you weigh 200 pounds, just 100 grams of protein is gonna be a lot less for you, okay? So, body weight, okay? Now, how do we choose how much protein to eat? The most important thing about protein based on body weight. There's actually a spectrum, okay? I prepared a table for you in a second, but we have actually a whole spectrum that we can look at. There you go. What a straight line. On the left side, on the low end, we have 1.2 grams per kilo or 0.55 grams per pound, okay? This is the low end where you can start to consider, like you can start to, you can start eating protein from this side, okay? This is the low end. And the high end is 2.35 grams per kilo or about 1.05 grams per pound, okay? This spectrum comes from a combination pretty much of all the studies as of today, but we've seen that the recommendations have actually been quite stable for a lot of time, okay, for a long time. And so we can be pretty confident that even if you watch this video in a few years, this is probably gonna be very, very safe and still relevant. And so this is our spectrum, okay? So 1.2 grams per kilo, what does it mean? For example, very simply, if you weigh 100 kilos, 1.2 means 120 grams of protein per day. That's it, okay? So this is our spectrum. Now, why is this the spectrum? Because if you go over this side, above this number, pretty much there's no benefit in extra muscle growth. Not even a probability of more benefit. Like, this is the high end to be 100% sure. While on this side, it's not about less benefits, it's actually that the costs start going up pretty steeply. Like, you're gonna build a lot less muscle if you choose to be below this number. So whatever you do, don't go below 1.2 grams per kilo or 0.55 grams per pound, because it's been shown over and over that below this number, really your muscle growth and ability to retain muscle is gonna go down by quite a lot. But this is still a big spectrum, okay? We want to decide one number and then stick to it and be at peace. So this is a big spectrum, like this number and this number is pretty much twice as big as this one. So I prepared a table here where we can go into the whole spectrum and actually make an informed decision, because each of those levels has some benefits and some costs that are a bit different, okay, at each level. So we don't just pick randomly. Based on our interests, we can make an informed decision. So basically, starting from here, this is pretty much where you can be about 80% sure, or actually, you at this level, you can expect to get 80% of the results, okay, that you can get in terms of muscle growth just from the variable of protein, okay? So you're optimizing about 80% of the way there. This is like the 80-20. To get to about 90% of the possible results, you want to eat 1.4 grams per kilos or 0.65 grams per pound. And at 1.6, you start to get about 100% of the results. Now this is interesting, because if this is already 100%, then what the hell is this? Why even worrying about this? In fact, you hear a lot of very competent people who are really into the most recent science recommending just 1.6 grams per kilo or 0.8 grams per pound. And that makes sense, because when you look at the data, and that's a lot of data, so it's not just one study, we're talking about tens of studies together, this is the kind of graph that you see, okay? On this side, we have muscle growth. Oh man, these lines. There you go. Gains with a Z. And on this side, we have protein, okay? So this is what we see, that if you increase protein above this point, pretty much, which is that magical 1.6 grams per kilo number, okay, you don't see many benefits, or actually no benefits at all. And this is where the recommendation comes from, okay? Now, why do we still consider higher numbers? Because this is an average, okay? This is an average. This means that there's gonna be people who are here, okay, basically who don't benefit from more protein already at like 1.2 already, but there's also people who are here and so still benefit from even higher amounts of protein. So the question is, how do you know if you're here, here, or here? How do you know if you're not the outlier? Well, you don't, unfortunately. You can't have reliable data where you make even tests on yourself. I mean, it's quite hard. I guess maybe you can know, but it's not even worth the effort to discover it, okay? So really, we need to think in terms of probability, okay? In terms of probability. How sure do you want to be? Remember, that's why I said right here, to how much protein you want to eat is depending on your body weight and how sure you want to be to maximize protein amount. And this is why how sure was the correct word. How sure do you want to be that even if you are an outlier, you're still gonna maximize your muscle growth? So back to our table. Sure, the average person gets 100% of the results. But you can be about 80% sure that you're gonna get 100% of the results. If you want to be even more sure, you can stay here, you're gonna be about 90% sure. And if you're here, 2 grams per kilo or 0.9 grams per pound, you're gonna be about 95% sure. And if you're here, you're gonna be around 98% sure. And if you're here, you're gonna be pretty much 100% sure that even if you're an outlier, you're still gonna build 100%, like squeeze every ounce of potential of muscle growth coming from protein, okay? And so this is a much more nuanced perspective that I think is missing when picking protein amounts and when hearing recommendations, okay? Well, it is true, okay? It is undeniable. When you look at the data, it is just undeniable that this 1.6 kilos is the cap, and beyond that, there's no reliable evidence of a relationship that keeps going up, okay? But it's mostly about being sure that even if you're an outlier, okay, you can build all the muscle that you can build from protein. So really, the only people that you need to watch out for are the people who tell you that going below 1.2 grams per kilo or 0.55 grams per pound is good enough. That's the kind of advice that actually badly affects your results, okay? But above this, it's pretty much just around about how sure you want to be, okay? Now, the next question is, of course, now we have this whole spectrum, and what I recommend, to be honest, is staying in this range, okay? Above this 1.5, because going from here to here doesn't cost much, doesn't even cost much in terms of effort and logistic to set it up. So this is what I recommend. But how do you choose between this range? Okay, how to decide? Decide, okay. Because again, like the amount, the how much here, the total amount is the most important variable for protein. So how do you decide exactly? I think there are a few factors that we can consider. The first one is health. So for many, many years, the idea that high amounts of protein, okay, are bad for health. This has been an idea that has been around for a long time, but when you look at actually the data, especially more recent one, even testing for amounts of protein that are 2 times as much as the highest recommendation here, like 4 grams per kilo or 2 grams per pound, which nobody's ever gonna do because it's really extreme. Like you need to only eat meat, like being a carnivore, to get to this amount of protein. Well, you see, no health issues. Like it's actually pretty healthy. It's a complete myth that high amounts of protein are bad for health. So this variable can be, again, taken away entirely. So we can truly consider the whole spectrum because it's not bad for your health. Since to some of you this can be very useful, I wanted to make a quick advertisement, well, from myself, because I always wanted to create one place, just one place where one would find everything you would ever need to know about training, about how to get stronger, how to build muscle, like all the most powerful ideas and models all in one place. And so I set out to do it, and took me 2 years of work, but I made it. And you can get it in Project Delta. Project Delta is the link in the description, and it's free. And once inside, you can get this in the premium tier. So again, this is meant to be the last thing you will ever need. So if you're interested, you can check it out in the link in the description of this video. What other variables are there to actually decide how much protein to eat? I guess another one can be money, okay? Now, depending on your financial situation, there could be a difference from going from here to here, okay? So this is another factor that you might want to consider. But I think really the big one is personal preference, and how sure you want to be, okay? It's that balance, in my opinion, that really determines your choice. So how much do you care about muscle growth, where you want to be 90% sure, 100% sure, and you balance that with your daily habits. So how much of your nutritional habits, just even the meals that you like, the food that you like, how much do you have to modify that in ways that you don't like so that you can be more sure? So I think that's the balance. And what I do, probably because it's just a round number to be honest, is I just stay around here. 2 grams per kilo, and that's it, okay? To be honest, and we're gonna go into this again later on, there's not that big of a difference. Like even if you're 90% sure and you're a bit of an outlier, you're probably gonna miss out on like 0.5% of your gains, okay? Nothing that crazy. So it's not really that important. But if you want to make an informed decision, those are the factors, except for health. It's really money, personal preference in actually the foods that you eat, and how sure do you want to be. So if, for example, I weigh 80 kilos, okay, this is pretty much my actual body weight, and I want to eat 2 grams per kilo of protein, this means I'm gonna eat 160 grams of protein per day. If I weigh 200 pounds and I want to eat maybe 0.9, okay? 0.9 grams per pound of protein. This is actually what you do, by the way. Like there's no fancy stuff. That's simple. You're gonna eat like 180 grams of protein per day. And that's it. Now, another question is, are these numbers, okay, grams per kilos, grams per pounds? Sure, they are on your body weight, but are they in terms of total body weight or lean mass? Which means your body weight taking away the body fat. So if you are 100, let's say 200 pounds at 10% body fat, okay, your lean mass is gonna be 180 pounds, okay, 10% less than this. So are there recommendations on total body weight or just lean mass? Actually, the studies, the research, and therefore the recommendations that you see are on your total body weight, not on lean mass. But of course, if you have more body fat or less body fat, then the protein amount that you eat from these recommendations is gonna also change. And that's not the most accurate thing in the world. So what you can do if you want is, if you estimate your body fat, and I'm gonna show you with a template how you can do that in a second, you can find your lean mass, okay, from just finding your body weight and your body fat, and there you go, that's your lean mass, and multiplying these recommendations by this factor of 1.17x, okay, 1.17. This compensates for the average 15% body fat of the members of the studies, okay, of the average person, okay? So if you multiply these recommendations for your lean mass, you're gonna find the more accurate version. So a simple example is, if you weigh, let's do it like from here, okay? 80 kilos. I weigh 80 kilos, 10% body fat, okay? That means that my actual lean mass is 72 kilos, okay? 8 kilos less, that's 10%. What's the new recommendation? 2 times 1.17 is gonna be 2.34 grams per kilo, okay? And I don't know what this results in protein. You can do with your calculator or whatever, okay? but this is how you can do it in a more precise way if you want to do it on lean mass. If you can't be bothered about it, that's cool. Just pick a number from here. It's not that important, okay? And the template that I'm gonna share with you is gonna make this a lot easier. But in summary here, for this point about amount, and then we're gonna go into the next points, the amount of protein is the most important thing there is. And in the past, bulking versus cutting was part of the variables influencing this decision. But today, we know that the only thing that matters is your body weight. Of course, that's the variable where you multiply how much protein you eat, and how safe you want to be, okay? The spectrum is from this much, 1.2 or 0.55, to this much, okay? And the only difference is how certain you want to be to get maximum gains, even if you are an outlier. Now that we figured out how much protein to eat pretty extensively, let's talk about the other factors. So, do they even matter? That's the big question. So we learned what doesn't matter. And you know what? I love when things don't matter. They just simplify your decisions, your life, and you can focus on what actually matters, okay? Which we never do enough. So we learned that health doesn't matter. Health doesn't matter, guys. No, health doesn't matter in a sense of making decisions on how much protein you should eat. Bulking versus cutting doesn't matter, doesn't influence, okay, how much protein you eat. Now, let's talk about something new. Does timing matter? Like, for example, does taking your total protein and distributing it so that throughout your day you eat it at evenly spaced intervals, is this important? Because for a long time, this was also considered something that you had to do. And I have a couple stories on this. And I'm gonna tell you them later. But this was the idea, okay? So if I have like 100 grams of total protein per day, I need to eat around 25, 25, 25, and 25, okay? Again, when you actually test for it, because this is grounded on hypothesis based on the physiology, and in theory, this should be beneficial for muscle growth. When you actually test for it, this does not matter. So you can truly eat like 50 grams here and 50 grams here, and then eat nothing here for all those hours in the day, and you're still gonna pretty much gain the same muscle. So timing really is another thing that doesn't really matter. But what about meal number, okay? So is there a difference if I take this total amount of protein and I distribute it into 3 meals, 2 meals, 6 meals, or more? Is there a difference? In theory, again, in the past, if you distribute it more evenly, you have some benefits. In practice, once again, the body is much more flexible than that. And so really, you can do whatever you want, okay? You can go from 2 meals to 10 meals, and you're gonna grow the same muscle as long as you actually train hard, follow a good plan, and all of the other advice that you can see on this channel, okay? The really important stuff for growing muscle and strength. So the meal number doesn't really matter. Like if you want to be really precise, why not at this point? Maybe 2 meals is slightly worse than 3 plus. Slightly, just slightly. What I think is though, on this topic of meal number, changing your number of meals that you like and you're used to for a tiny, tiny benefit in muscle growth, is it really worth the cost of changing your whole daily eating habits? I think not. So if you, for your work or managing your hunger or whatever reason, you like 2 meals, I wouldn't go to 3 to get that fractional benefit. I don't think it's worth it. That just the mental cost is not worth it. Okay? And so we can say, in conclusion, that meal number doesn't really matter. Okay? It may matter a fraction, but I don't think it's even worth the cost. And so we are here, and already still the only thing that matters about protein is still the amount. Is there other things that we need to worry about? There's one last one before we go into actual strategies to put all this together, and I'm very excited about that part, and that's quality. Okay? Protein quality. Protein quality is not about whether it's healthy or not, but it's simply about this, okay? There are 2 main sources of protein: animal sources and plant sources. Animal sources are high quality. Plant sources are low quality because of the amino acids they have, okay? This has all the essential amino acids. Plants don't have all the essential amino acids. And so the idea is that you can't quite make a full use of the protein that comes from plant sources, like even rice, for example, okay? Or vegetables or whatever. And for this reason, if you eat a lot of plant sources, maybe you need more protein than the recommendations. In practice, most of us, even bodybuilders, even people at the top levels, eat a lot of protein from plant sources, a lot of rice, for example. And so really, the recommendation really applies to the extremes, so I would say for vegans. Okay? If you're vegan, then I would take whatever number you chose from this table based on how sure you want to be and so on. Okay, we talked about it. And increase it, if you're vegan, okay, by 20%, okay? So if you chose to eat like 2 grams per kilo, you're gonna go to 2.4 grams per kilo, okay? But this is an extreme. There are vegans around, it's cool, but for most of us who also eat animal products, even eggs or dairy, not just meat, you don't even need to do this. So unless you're vegan, quality also doesn't matter. How cool is this? Pretty much the only thing, okay? The only thing that matters is just how much protein you eat. Just the sheer simple number. And look at a pattern here, okay? Notice this. A couple things that you can notice from this, and you're gonna see them over and over when you look into training advice. Number one, theories that, well, I'm not gonna write this all, but they don't hold in practice, okay? You're gonna see a lot of theories where, in theory, the physiology, okay? So given this mechanism in your body, if you eat this number of protein and you eat this much of this molecule, you should get more muscle. Then you test it in practice and it doesn't work. But for a variety of reasons, whether because people are not informed or not staying updated, or for marketing reasons, because you see this a lot with supplements. Okay, a lot of the rationale behind many supplements is in the physiology. They're gonna tell you that this molecule affects this stuff, that affects this stuff, and therefore you're gonna build more muscle or whatever benefits they promise. But when you look in practice at people who take the supplements versus don't take the supplement, for like 99% of them, you see no difference. Like zero difference. That's just a waste of money. And this happens because of this fallacy. Theories that are perfect until you test them and they just don't work. And you don't know why they don't work. They just don't work. The body's complex, okay? And we see this with a lot of old advice about protein. That's why all those variables that many people still go are hardcore about don't quite work. And the other thing that you're gonna notice is the mental cost of tiny optimizations. Okay, sometimes we only consider the benefit in terms of our goal without considering the full spectrum of costs. Like, sure, I can manage to go from my habit of 3 meals, come on, 3 meals to like 9 meals, okay, going to an extreme example. But is it worth it? Like maybe all that mental fatigue, all that stress from changing stuff continuously, from having to think about 100 different tiny things to maximize my muscle growth is gonna make me stressed, which is gonna make me skip workouts, okay? The most important part, actually working out, and therefore is gonna cost me more than if I just didn't follow these 100 things. Okay, this is a pattern that you're gonna see, and that's why I'm an advocate for really understanding what matters and making an informed decision where you don't have to optimize everything, but the few things that really matter, you want to go really hardcore into. Actually, if you want to hear a diarrhea story, I have one for this one. So I tried to follow the advice once for a few months of timing plus meal number, okay? So I had this total amount of protein that I wanted to distribute evenly throughout the day. And so I had to eat like a bigger meal as soon as I woke up and eat some protein before going to sleep. And so what I did was, normally I just eat a big lunch and dinner, but I added eggs, egg whites actually, here, which I was not used to, and that's the diarrhea story. Like a lot of, every day, imagine every day, those fucking egg whites to add like, after all, we now learned no extra muscle, just not digesting them, terrible experience. So this, and talking about the cost, the mental cost, in this case even physical, of optimizing this bullshit. And also, in the evening, before going to sleep, I eat casein protein. Okay, there's like protein powder, but from a different source, and it should have a slower rate of absorption. And so even if you're not eating for like 8 hours of sleep, this low absorption protein is gonna continuously give you nutrients so that you never go into catabolism and lose muscle. In practice, this doesn't matter at all. And this casein protein that I eat a whole like box of or whatever tastes like chalk. It's disgusting. It sticks to your mouth. It's just terrible. Is it worth it? Now we know that this doesn't even matter at all. But even if it did, that 1% maybe, is it worth to eat something that tastes like chalk every night? Terrible stuff, okay? Highly not recommended. And the people who tried this, you know. And so you can get a bit of a real example of how not worth it this can be, and just the peace of mind of keeping things simple, which in the end, the body is very flexible, and after a couple of years, you know that all of this didn't matter anyway. So this is what I do now, okay? Let's move on a little bit. And I think this can be interesting to see. Like after knowing all this stuff and experimenting a lot, what do I do now? So this is what I do. It's very simple. Number one, step one, know is with a K. Know my body weight and body fat percentage, okay? We're gonna see in the template in a second how to estimate your body fat from some pictures. And this is what you should do, okay? Know your body weight, ideally your body fat, but that's optional, okay? This is optional. Number two, pick a number from this table based on the costs and benefits, based on how sure I want to be, okay? I pick a number, and in my case, I like 2 grams per kilo, probably because it's just a round number and there's not that big of a difference between 1.6 and 2.4, okay? So I stick with this. I've been eating like this for a long time. It's cool, it's my routine. And the end. That's what I do for protein. You've seen my results at the start of the video. It has worked. So that's something. So summary of this part, and there's some stuff that I want to tell you that's very important after. But really, the most and only important thing is how much protein you eat, no matter if you're bulking, cutting, training for strength, training for hypertrophy, or the number of meals, or the quality of the protein. The only thing that matters is how much. And you only decide that only based on your body weight and how safe you want to be, based on this table that you're gonna find also in the link in the description, in the summary of this video. And I hate, like, let's point to an enemy. I actually have a note saying enemies, people who tell you that you need to do 25 things, and if you don't do them, you're gonna die and remain skinny for the rest of your life. That's of course false. That's like using fear tactics and a desperate way to distinguish themselves, knowing that that's not even true. And I think that's unsustainable also for those people who give this advice, okay? So keep it simple. In practice, we also saw that not keeping it simple in this case about protein doesn't even make sense, okay? Now, even if the amount of protein is important, how important is it really compared to everything you can do in training? So if you've watched my videos, there's a framework that I created and helps me view a lot of things in life, actually, not just in training. That's pyramids, okay? So I like to structure my pyramids in 5 tiers, where at the bottom tier is pretty much where stuff makes no difference. Here it makes a tiny difference. Here is pretty important, okay, or actually influential to results. The 4th tier is pretty much crucial, okay? Like if you don't have this, it's gonna be very hard to get to the result. And here is what I call the one thing, where basically if you just do this, it's very hard to not succeed. Then if you don't do this, it's gonna be, I don't know, what did I say? If you do this, it's gonna be almost impossible to not succeed. And if you don't, it's gonna be almost impossible to succeed. There you go. So, protein. We know now that pretty much all about protein except for the amount is in this category, okay? Makes no difference, 1 star, don't bother with it. What makes a tiny difference? This is the things where you go for the optimal approach, okay? You try to perfect, and this is the range above 1.6 grams per kilo or above 0.8 grams per pound, okay? So as long as you're at around, really, as long as you're above 1.2, you have obtained most of the results that you are gonna get from protein. Everything else just makes a tiny improvement. So, being real, even though protein amount is important, it's really just a 2 star out of a scale to 5. 3 stars is the important part, and this is where you want to be above 1.2 grams per kilo, okay? Or 0.5555 grams per pound, okay? This is where, if you are below this, it's actually gonna cost you. Like, you're gonna see meaningfully worse results in terms of muscle growth and therefore strength, okay? So you want to be above this. But once you're above this, it starts to matter a lot less. And nothing in terms of nutrition or protein gets into the highest tiers, because of course, the highest tiers are all about two things: training and pretty much consistency, which results in more training. Guess what? Okay. So at the crucial tier, we have things like failure, okay? Especially for hypertrophy. Training to failure is the big #1 reason your muscles grow. No matter what people tell you, I don't even know all of the perspectives that there are around this, the evidence around this, and even the simple logic, like you're training hard, you're giving a good reasons for your muscles to grow, okay? Failure is at the crucial level. And the other thing would be things around motivation. So having a training program, having a plan, things that help. And finally, the one thing, which is kind of now the mantra of this channel, is train hard, don't skip workouts. This is the one thing, because if you just focus on this and ignore everything else, it's pretty much gonna be impossible to not build a shit ton of muscle and therefore strength as well, okay? And just repeat this for like 5 years, okay? Just to be sure. And that's by far the most important part. But it's still good to optimize, but just keep things in perspective, okay? Now, let's look into what exactly to do now. Now that we know all this stuff, we have all this context and information about protein, let's now look into our when-then solutions. Okay, if I'm able to zoom in. When-then. I like to structure actual advice in this way, because you're gonna know that next time you're gonna have this problem, trigger, do this. So next time you need to plan your diet, or you need to know or decide your protein, okay, then do this. First, okay, know your body weight. And really, you just need to do this once, especially if you also know your body fat, because your lean mass is gonna be a lot more stable over time, okay? It's hard to gain a lot of muscle over time, so really you can calculate this like once a year, and therefore know your protein amount and calculate it once a year. That's pretty nice. Number 2, from the table above, decide or pick protein amount. And number 3 is weigh your foods, okay, food tracking, you could say. Plan your diet so that you hit this amount every day and train hard, and that's the end of this process. Now I'm gonna show you with the template how you can do this very simply, okay?
So if you click the link in the description and you join Project Delta, which is free, you will get here, okay? Click on free resources, the all-in-one template, okay? And let's open it, okay? You can make your own copy, whatever. And here, under protein, you can see the protein calculator, okay? The template I was talking about and that I would use. So let's see a real example, for example, on my own body weight and how I would calculate my protein, okay? So first you select pounds or kg, okay? I select kilos. I set my body weight, that's 79. Now set my body fat. I don't know what my body fat is, let's say. You can use the body fat sheet, okay? You can click here or just down here. And you can see reference pictures for all body fats. I know that I'm around 10%. And so I'm gonna write, or select better, 10%, okay? If you're still unsure, there's an option to write unsure, and this will be calculated instead of on your lean mass that you can see here, it will be calculated on your total body weight, okay? But I know by body fat it's around 10%, and then you pick one of the approaches that I explained to you, okay? You can pick 1.8, and that will result in 150 grams of protein a day, or maybe 2.2, okay? And that would result in 183 grams of protein a day, okay? What I actually do is around 2, and so as you can see, that's around 166 grams of protein per day. And that's it, okay? Your lean mass is gonna be pretty stable, and therefore, this number is gonna be stable pretty much for at least 1 year, okay? You can do this calculation even just once a year. Now let's do a quick example with pounds, okay? Let's say we select pounds. Now this says pick another number, okay? Because the guidelines for pounds are gonna be different. So if this error comes up, we're gonna fix it soon. So let's say that your body weight is 165 pounds, your body fat is 20%. Again, click here, body fat, and you look 20%, looks like you, good, okay? Back to protein. How many grams per pound do you want to choose? Let's say that you go for 0.8 grams per pound. And so you know that your protein in grams per day is 124 grams a day, calculating on your lean mass, okay, 132 pounds. Sounds good? Pretty simple. Let's continue with the video.
Now, how about in special situations? Okay, I have a few for you. The first special situation is beginners versus intermediates versus advanced. Okay, so you don't need different recommendations for protein, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. Just pick from the table, eat whatever range you chose, okay? Around 2 grams per kilo or 1.6 grams per kilo, okay? We talked about it. And this doesn't make a difference, okay? It's the same muscle, the same physiology, the same mechanism. What if you can't hit your protein today? Okay? What I recommend, if today, for example, you find out at the end of the day that you are 50 grams below your target, you can just compensate, okay? Either next day or throughout the next week. Now, if this happens all the time, I recommend another approach. Instead of compensating, just plan for it, okay? Expect it to happen. Include that possibility in your plan so that you don't even have to run after fixing stuff, and you just expect it, okay? So if you constantly eat out and don't have a regular schedule, just plan for it. Know that on the days that maybe you're more stable, you're gonna just eat more protein, and that's part of your plan. And really the final special situation is if you're vegan, okay? We talked about it before, but it's a special case, so let's talk about it. Just add 20% to the recommendations above, okay? So from 2 grams per kilo, that's what you pick, you go to 2.4 grams per kilo, okay? Pretty simple. That's if you're vegan. For every other situation, if you're training for different sports, different, like for hypertrophy or for strength, doesn't really make a difference. Let's add a tiny extra like endurance. So if you like to run a lot or do cycling a lot, you could stay on the lower range, okay? Lower end of the range, maybe 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilo or 0.55 to 0.8 grams per pound, because maybe you want to make more room for carbohydrates depending on how much volume of endurance you do, okay? That's gonna be important. But now, what about the supplementos? What about them? Okay, how about supplements for protein? So there are a lot of protein sources. There's whey. What I tried is whey and casein. Casein, as you know, from my bad experience, this tastes like shit. This is what I tried, but when you do research, you really see that all protein supplements pretty much do the same job, okay? I would say pick the one that tastes the best and that's cheapest, because protein is protein and all of them are good, okay? So this is what I do about supplements. Casein, never again, as you know. For whey, I tried both doing 30 grams or 60 grams per day. This is like 1 scoop or 2 scoops of protein per day. And this was in phases where I had to like eat 1 kilo of meat a day to get to my protein amount. So I was cutting, I didn't have that much carbs and rice and pasta to give me protein. So that's when I did that. What I do now, actually, I use 0 supplements, not because there's a problem with them, but because I just can't be bothered to think about stuff and I want the least like moving pieces. Okay, I know this doesn't matter. I would rather eat a bit of extra chicken or meat or fish or whatever and not having to think about the protein shake that I have to do in the afternoon, okay? I have to drink. This is my approach now. But all of this can work. So really, to give you a couple of pro tips, this is really pro tips from real experience, okay? Pro tips that you may like. This is what I actually do now, okay? The guiding principle is that only the how much matters for protein. This is my guiding principle. Based on that, here's what I do. Again, number 1, we know, just know your body weight and body fat optional, as you saw from the template. 2, put it in the template. Okay, that's how I actually calculate how much protein I need to eat. 3, just eat my 2 grams per kilo of body weight, okay? Or if you calculate on lean mass, that's around 2.34 grams per kilo, okay? 4, what I do is I create a diet plan, okay? And I make it in yellow, very standardized. That's the pro tip for this video. So I make my meals and what I eat very similar, okay? I don't have to recheck the macros of my food continuously, okay? It's very standard, okay? Very, very standard. I'm actually gonna tell you exactly what I eat. Yeah, why not? I'm gonna tell you exactly what I do, what I eat, and all about my personal life. So I'm about 78 kilos and I eat 160 grams of protein. And this is how it's actually distributed. Like, it's nothing fancy again. In practice, this is what you pretty much have to do, okay? Know your protein and you calculate it from knowing your body weight and doing a simple multiplication, what a word. And then you create a diet knowing your macros from the foods that you eat. So what I do is eat for breakfast around half a liter of milk, okay? And that's about 99% of the protein. Then throughout the day, over 2 meals, I eat 400 grams of meat or equivalent in chicken or fish or whatever. And that's about 57% of this. Then I eat around 270 grams of pasta, mainly, sometimes rice. Gotta be, show your Italianness here. Pasta, 28%. And from various sources, I eat the remaining 6% of protein, snacks, fruit, whatever else throughout the day, okay? And this is how it is. I plan this, I know that I need to eat this pretty much every day, and I don't change this around pretty much never, actually. If I want to bulk or cut, I make slight modifications, mainly to pasta and meat, okay? But overall, I make a standardized plan so that daily, like I make the planning once a month or whatever, and on a daily basis, I don't have to weigh my foods. No, actually, I still have to weigh my foods, but I don't have to look at the macros and track and input every single food that I eat, okay? That's the part where I remove a lot of friction. I'm gonna make a video on this, by the way, how to actually create a standardized plan, where pretty much this takes me like 10 minutes per month to have a professional diet. How about that? Unfortunately, training is just a bit more complex than nutrition, and what you do then, once you have your diet in practice, is you weigh your foods, pretty much then check on the internet or ask an AI or see them in your apps what the macros, okay, are. And from this, you just hit your target amount of protein, whatever it is, and that's the end. That's actually what you do, okay? You know exactly what I'm eating. So the key is to making this smoother. So how do you make all of this, actually all of this that we talked about? Final tips, how to make this smoother. Smooth. Recommendations are focus on what matters, okay? So as long as you eat more than 1.6 grams per kilo or 0.8 grams per pound, it doesn't matter that much. So I would prioritize your personal preference over optimizing this too much, okay? Second, again, for peace of mind, I would ignore everything else. I would ignore timing, I would ignore the number of meals, I would ignore everything except for getting in this number. And the final one is big one, simplify the tracking, okay? I'm gonna make a video on this, especially if you want to, let me know in the comments. But simplifying this, where from being a hassle that you have to do every day, tracking every food, hated that, going from something into something that takes like 10 minutes a month, okay? And the big takeaway, the big takeaway here that I want is, number one, the only thing that matters is the amount, okay? Know your body weight, pick a number of protein and eat them however you want, whatever number of meals you want, whatever time of the day, just hit that number and you are good. And to pick the number is just a range. This informed by a ton of research, and this, I don't expect it to change like ever, these recommendations, okay? You can be pretty sure I did a lot of research. I should have said it before, it would have been more persuasive, my advice, but I did a ton of research about this. And this is the numbers that keep coming up. Even when you look at new research, surprising studies, it's always these recommendations, okay? So you pick a number knowing the costs and the benefits, okay? And even then, when you look at the training pyramid, at the full spectrum, okay, of priorities to get muscle and strength, really optimal protein, the amount, the most important variable, is still making a tiny difference as long as you eat above 1.2, really 1.6 grams per kilo. And what matters is always train hard, don't skip workouts. So as usual, at the end of every video, I'm gonna leave you with a clip of a lift of mine from my archive, already recent, and a physique update, just for, I guess, proof that I practice what I preach. So you can enjoy that. And I'm gonna see you next week. I got a nice banger coming up, so you want to be sure to be there for that.